finally, what we all have been waiting for and calling for and questioning why it wasn't happening. Stephanie White has stepped up to the plate in defense of Caitlin Clark. I could not believe my ears, guys. I could not believe my ears when I heard this. Stephanie White actually being bold enough to stand on business and protect Caitlin Clark. Stephanie White
just said what everyone else in the WNBA is too scared to say out loud. She went all in about how Caitlin Clark's name keeps getting dragged into every CBA debate, even when Caitlin doesn't say a word. And White? She didn't sugarcoat anything. Let's break down what she said and why it's hitting nerves everywhere. Do you think Caitlin Clark is being used unfairly by the WNBA and its players?
To the plate, saying what it is. These people are using Caitlin Clark. They're disrespecting, and we can't allow it.
All right, so Stephanie White, Indiana Fever's head coach, just gave an interview that's making waves across the WNBA. She did something worse for the league. She spoke calmly and told the truth. Her exact words were, "I hate it all for Caitlin. She's a 23-year-old kid who loves to play this game, and she's a pawn in a lot of other people's games." And that line alone set the tone, because she's not wrong. Caitlin Clark has become the centerpiece of every argument in the WNBA. Whether it's player salaries, TV ratings, media favoritism, or even officiating, her name always ends up in the mix.
And it is Stephanie White talking about Caitlin Clark being brought up in a lot of these conversations in CBA by other people, and not her speaking herself. And I think this is a really interesting one. And it's clear from this answer, I've already listened to this, it's very clear from this answer that Stephanie White clearly and Caitlin Clark, there's clearly a level of person, like they clearly really like each other as people.
The wild part, Caitlin herself has barely said anything controversial this season, yet somehow she's been pulled into every feud like she's the face of every problem in the league. And Stephanie White has had enough of it. When she says Caitlin's being used as a pawn, she's calling out everyone, the players, the commissioner, even the media. Every side is using Caitlin to push its own story. Let's be honest here. Caitlin Clark is the biggest name women's basketball has ever seen at this point. She's the ratings boost, the ticket seller, and the headline magnet. And when someone brings in that much attention, it's easy for everyone else to grab on. But it's gotten ridiculous. Every time a player criticizes the league, Caitlin's name gets dragged in. Every time the WNBA releases a new policy, it's compared to how it affects Caitlin. It's like, she's not even a person anymore. She's a marketing strategy. And that's exactly what Stephanie White is tired of seeing.
And then Caitlin Clark kind of getting brought into that, Caitlin Clark responding to it. What has been your overall assessment of that dialogue and as it relates to your star player?
Yeah, I mean, I hate it all for Caitlin. I feel like, she's a 23-year-old kid who loves to play this game, who is a pawn in a lot of other people's games and a lot of other people's narratives, and I hate that for her. We're coming into a time in the WNBA where we're kind of part of the growing pains of becoming quote unquote mainstream professional sport is some of this stuff.
She's watched Caitlin all season long, taking physical hits on the court, taking verbal hits off it, and handling it all without snapping. But the truth is, no one should have to carry the weight of an entire league's politics at 23 years old. When White says pawn, she means it literally. The WNBA uses Caitlin to sell tickets. The players use her to demand better contracts. The media uses her for clicks. And the fans, they just end up watching a league that seems more focused on drama than basketball. Now here's where it gets interesting. White isn't just speaking as a coach defending her player. She's speaking as someone who's been around since the league's early days. She was there when the WNBA was fighting for basic stuff, like healthcare and year-round pay. So when she says this is a growing pain, she's talking from experience. Back then, players were just happy to have a league. Now they want what they've earned. More money, more control, and more respect. But the leadership? Still playing catch-up. White made it clear, leadership needs to reflect where we are as a league. Translation. The people in charge are stuck in the past. She didn't say Kathy Engelbert's name, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew who she was talking about, because at this point, every controversy circles back to the commissioner. Let's face it, Engelbert's been in the hot seat for months, from dismissing players' concerns to her tone-deaf comments about Caitlyn's off-court money. She's managed to make both fans and players angry. So when White says, "We need better leadership," it's the most polite version of "get your act together" you'll ever hear. And honestly, she's right. How many times have we seen the league mishandle something simple? From inconsistent refereeing to communication breakdowns to fines that make no sense. It's like the people running things have no idea how to handle success. Because yes, the WNBA is growing, but it's growing because of the players, not because of the office people. Stephanie White even said, "Your employees are your #1 asset." And she's right, the players are the league, yet somehow they're the ones constantly feeling disrespect.
I do think that we are at a pivotal moment in terms of the league's history. And look, I was a part of the very first collective bargaining agreement of the WNBA, where we wanted insurance all year long, to now where it is growing and players do deserve more. And leadership needs to reflect where we are as a league, and also understand where we are as a league and where players' perspectives are coming from. And we have coaches on the sidelines, and Becky Hammond and myself, and of course Noelle Quinn, who was in Seattle, who played in this league.
Let's rewind for a second. A few weeks ago, Napheesa Collier went off on Kathy Engelbert, accusing her of bad leadership, and even claiming that Kathy said Caitlyn should be grateful for the WNBA platform. That was a huge story, and instead of addressing it directly, Kathy dropped the most robotic, disheartened statement ever. Then came Sophie Cunningham, who flat out called Kathy the most delusional leader our league has ever seen. Lexi Hull backed up Collier. Becky Hammond threw shade about officiating. And now, Stephanie White, the calm, measured one, is also speaking out. If that doesn't tell you how deep the frustration runs, nothing will. But back to Caitlyn. She's barely said anything about all this. When reporters asked her about Collier's comments, all she said was, "I have great respect for Fee. She made a lot of valid points." That's it. She didn't take sides. She didn't escalate things. Yet her name stayed in headlines for weeks because people can't stop attaching her to every issue. White hates that. You can hear it in her tone. She feels protective of Caitlyn, not just as her player, but as a person. She knows how much pressure comes with being the face of the league, because here's the truth. Caitlyn didn't ask for that title. The league handed it to her. They saw the ratings jump and said, "Yep, she's our golden ticket." And now, when things go wrong, she's also the scapegoat. That's the messed up part. Stephanie White is basically saying, stop using Caitlin Clark as your shield. If you have problems with the CBA, deal with them. If you're mad about leadership, say that. But don't turn every debate into the Caitlin Clark conversation. The sad part, it's not going to stop anytime soon, because Caitlin equals money, and money talks. But here's the twist. The more they use her name, the more fans start turning against the league, because people see through it now. They can tell when the league's using her image to cover its own failures. Remember earlier this season when referees let her get thrown around on the court and the league said nothing? Then when the backlash got loud, they suddenly started issuing player safety statements. Yeah, that's what White's talking about. They only react when it looks bad publicly, not when it's the right thing to do. And it's not just about officiating. It's about respect. It's about communication. It's about actually listening to the people who make the league possible. White's been in the WNBA long enough to know the difference between leadership and PR talk. And Kathy Engelbert, she's all PR talk. That's why players like Collier and coaches like White are pushing back now, because they've seen this movie before, and it doesn't end well. The WNBA's at a crossroads. They've got momentum, attention, and stars who can actually move the needle, but they're also running out of patience, and Stephanie White just put that out in the open. Now here's something that might get overlooked. White also defended the league itself in a subtle way. She said this chaos is part of growing pains, and she's right. No league becomes great without some internal mess. The NBA went through it. The NFL went through it. The difference is, those leagues had leadership that learned from it. The question is, will the WNBA? Because if they don't, these cracks will turn into full-on fractures. And here's the kicker. While everyone's fighting, the fans are losing interest. All this behind-the-scenes drama overshadows what happens on the court. The basketball itself gets forgot. Stephanie White gets that. That's why her message is balanced. She's not taking shots at anyone. She's reminding them what's at stake. The WNBA's credibility depends on how it handles its stars, and right now, it's doing a terrible job. Now let's be honest, Stephanie White didn't just defend Caitlin Clark here. She low-key called out the entire WNBA system while sounding like the only adult in the room when she said, "We are part of the growing pains of becoming a mainstream league." That wasn't just some throwaway line. That was a reality check for everyone, players, owners, and the front office. Because right now, the WNBA is acting like a league that wants the fame and money of the NBA, but still runs things like a high school athletic department. Think about it. You've got top-tier athletes flying commercial, fighting over salary scraps, and getting fined for speaking the truth. Meanwhile, the people in suits get all the credit when ratings go up. Even though it's the players doing the heavy lifting, Stephanie White knows that. She's seen both sides. She played in the league when it was hanging by a thread, and now she's coaching during its biggest growth spurt ever. She's not anti-league, she's anti-nonsense. And when she says Caitlin is being used as a pawn, that's the most polite way of saying everyone's cashing in on her while pretending they're not. The WNBA has built this weird culture where everyone wants to support women's basketball, but not if it means admitting one player, Caitlin Clark, is driving most of the growth. They'll happily use her in promos, show her face in every ad, and mention her every 5 seconds during broadcast. But the second she gets too much credit, they suddenly panic. Oh no, she's getting too popular. She's overshadowing others. Like, sorry, that's what happens when someone changes the game. Michael Jordan did it, LeBron did it, Serena did it, now Caitlin's doing it. And just like every other revolution in sports, there's jealousy, fear, and power struggles behind the scenes. That's what Stephanie White sees, and she's smart enough to say it without burning bridges. But the irony is, the WNBA doesn't know what to do with success. They finally have the attention they've begged for. Millions of new fans, packed arenas, real hype, and they're wasting it with internal drama and tone-deaf leadership. And the funniest part, Kathy Engelbert is now pretending like she's the one who grew the league. Yeah, right. The league exploded because Caitlin Clark made people care. People started watching because of her games, not because the commissioner gave another press conference about sustainability. And every time someone calls that out, Kathy suddenly acts like she's the victim. Oh, I'm disheartened. Lady, you're not a middle school principal. You're running a professional league. That's the kind of fake leadership Stephanie White's talking about. It's not leadership when you hide behind press releases and scheduled meetings. Leadership is standing up for your players when they're being crushed online or disrespected on the court. White has done that. Engelbert hasn't, and it's funny because the people defending Kathy keep saying she's a businesswoman. Sure, but being a businesswoman doesn't mean you get to ignore the basketball part of the job. Players like Collier, Sophie Cunningham, and even coaches like Becky Hammond are frustrated because they feel like the business side is taking over everything. They see decisions being made that make money sense, but not basketball sense. And you can tell it's reached a boiling point. Everyone's snapping, just in different ways. Collier gave a speech like she was running for office. Sophie Cunningham went full flamethrower on the mic. And Stephanie White, well, she just calmly dropped a truth bomb that hit harder than both of them combined. Because she's right, Caitlin Clark's being used by everyone. Let's break it down. The league uses her to show sponsors they're growing. The media uses her name for clicks. The players use her as leverage in negotiation, and the fans use her as a reason to bash the WNBA every time something goes wrong. Meanwhile, Caitlin just wants to hoop. Stephanie said it best. She's 23 and all she wants is to play the game she loves. But the politics around her are out of control. Every move she makes becomes a headline. Every expression gets dissected. If she smiles, she's being fake. If she doesn't, she's arrogant. If she wins, it's because of favoritism. If she loses, it's because she's overrated. At some point, something's gotta give. Stephanie White didn't just defend Caitlin Clark, she defended the future of the WNBA. Because if the league keeps treating its biggest star like a pawn instead of a person, it's not just Caitlyn who'll walk away. It'll be the fans too. What do you think? Is Stephanie right about the WNBA's leadership? Hit that like button and subscribe for more.